Welcome to the Hazard Class Podcast. This is the podcast where I ask my stupid questions to some of the smartest people in and around the world of emergency services. My guest this week is a battalion chief with the West Columbia, South Carolina Fire Department and the creator of the Fire Inside blog. He's an active speaker, author, and instructor who has 20 years of combined volunteer and career service. He holds a bachelor's degree in fire protection administration and a master's degree in organizational leadership. It's my pleasure to chat with Marc Aloan. Chief, pleasure. How are you?
Hey, good morning. How are you?
Yeah, man, it's great. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate it. We were introduced to one another through a mutual friend, Peter Matthews. He said, this is a guy that you need to get on the podcast and talk. And so when Pete gives me a recommendation, I hold it in pretty high regard. So I'm happy to have you and that you were receptive to the invitation to come on. So 20 years in the fire service, now a battalion chief. Let's go all the way back to the very beginning. What's the inspiration to get into the fire service?
Oh, man. Yeah, I grew up like a block from the volunteer firehouse where I grew up in upstate New York. I had a couple of neighbors that were active volunteers. And it's the old school Northeasters they call. They have like the air raid siren that goes off. So everybody knows, back to the old days to come to the firehouse. It's just kind of one of those traditions that stuck. So my fire service career started, that air raid siren would go off and I'd get on my bike and I'd pedal as fast as I could to go down there and try to catch the trucks going out. And then I'd follow them as far as I could. And, sometimes they'd go a few blocks and I'd catch up and other times they'd be off, into the abyss and try again tomorrow. So, I'm one of those weird dudes. I don't have like this, story of, I'm first generation. So it's not a family thing for me by any stretch of the imagination. I didn't have a fire growing up. I didn't witness some kind of, miraculous rescue. It's kind of innate for me. I've just always really been into the fire service, even little, like, everybody else was playing, Transformers and this and that. And I had all that, but it was always fire trucks and, ambulances and cop cars for me. So fast forward a little bit, I turn 17 and it kind of dawns on me that, hey, I might be old enough to do this now. So I go down and unfortunately the one right next to my house at the time, they didn't do the junior firefighter program. It was 18 and I was 17. So we had another fire department across town that had junior firefighters. So I joined up with them. And then when I turned 18, I went to the one down the road from my house. I was in school to be a paramedic, actually, right after high school. And, two things worked against me. One, I was very immature and didn't realize it. And two, my community college was in my fire district. So I'd peace out on school every time we got a call. And apparently that's not really good for the grade book. So I was kind of, first time in my life, I was in this weird situation where I don't think I was failing out, but I was teetering and I'd never failed anything in my life. So I had a buddy that was going in the Air Force. I ended up talking to his recruiter. My father was in the Army, so that was an easy sell. I had him on my side and we convinced my mom it was a good deal. So off to the Air Force I went. I had a recruiter that convinced me to do signals intelligence versus the fire department because it looked better for him. I didn't know that then, but and so that ties into the fire journey though, because the only other school at Goodfellow Air Force Base, at least at the time in the upper panhandle of Texas, besides intelligence school, is fire school. So for my 6 months there, I got to watch the firemen train while I went to my windowless building to do whatever it is we do. So I went off to Germany for a couple of years and that was cool. And then I came back, I got stationed in Georgia. I was able to start volunteering again. And about the time I was up for reenlistment, this department where I live here in Columbia County, they were hiring. So I took a job there and then I was there for 12 years. I had an opportunity to go to West Columbia at that point in 2019 as a lateral, as a captain, just looking for something a little busier, a little more urban, just trying to get a different perspective of the fire service. And it just kind of worked out. I ended up being a battalion chief and, I love it. I still think being a company officer is probably the best position, in the building, but battalion chief's a very close 1A to me, if you want to look at it that way. So And then, somewhere in the middle of that journey, I started writing things and talking to people and doing classes and conferences and podcasts. And I listened to your intro. You talk about the smartest people in the fire service. I hate to disappoint. I don't know that I qualify, but
Yeah, no. I think you undersell yourself, but so go back to those early days. Do you remember ever, you talk about trying to chase the fire trucks on your bike. Do you remember ever making it to the fires and what you experienced seeing any of those fires early on?
Yeah, so I don't think I ever actually made it to a fire. So like to put in perspective, like it wasn't a great distribution point where the firehouse was. It was very much in the corner of the community. So they were usually going away from my house versus towards it.
Oh, no.
It was very rare for them to come out towards us. But no, I don't ever remember really going to a fire. I remember going in and seeing a couple of wrecks with them, and it was mainly fire alarm. It's a small town in New York. You're talking about at the time they're probably running, I don't know, 150 to 300 calls max a year. It's nothing like it is now. So it's not like there was a ton of opportunities for me. It was just watching the rigs go down there. The rigs have always been the thing for me. I'm like a light and siren nerd. Like, and it always goes back to that for me. So I think that was the allure. And then when I turned 17, I started training and we went to our first bar. I was like, oh, and you have to go in the fire. This is different. But, luckily I enjoyed it. So,
yeah. What do you remember about the first time you went into a fire?
Man, it's funny. I'm glad nobody's ever asked me this on a podcast. So I vividly remember my first fire was a mutual aid fire, probably 5 minutes up the road from my house. And it was me and another young kid in a past chief driving, which I later learned in life that sitting in the front seat doesn't make you an officer, right? We had these poor retired guys that were in charge of us crazy kids during the daytime, and we never knew it. But anyways, so we go in on this line, and they're like, hey, the fire's straight in. So we go in, it's smoky, and we open up this door. We just start blasting water, and then somebody comes and taps on the shoulder, like, guys, you're flowing water in a closet, like the fire's around the corner. What are you doing? So we kind of moved around, and there was a fire. It was I think it was a refrigerator that started, but the fire was like in the wall behind it, so we were able to pull it out. It was a small deal, right? But I vividly remember that the closet moment. And the thing that stuck out to me about this fire, honestly, this is going to sound like a horrible story. People will be like, my God, you're awful. But the family's pet had died. And I remember that part of the fur was stuck to my bunker coat. And we were outside kind of doing what firemen do, laughing about it. And I remember being out there putting hose on the truck and seeing them tell the family that their dog passed. And they just broke down. And I think like a crap story, right? But what a good experience later in life to have early on. Is just like, I think I was fortunate that early on I really understood that like we get to do some really cool things and it's okay to be excited to go to a fire and like everybody wants to do their job. But at the same time, there's that other side of it. And if you don't have compassion for the people you're serving, then you're just self-serving, through the fire department. So it's kind of a happy and a sad story all at one time, but it stuck with me.
Yeah, that's one of the weirdest, dichotomies inside the fire service is that like we're here to prevent fire, we're here to stop fire, but also if it happens, we want to be there, right? And it's like this through line. Every single fireman that's worth anything has that same feeling that I want to go, but also it's too bad that it's happening. So balancing all that along the way, and so. You do your time. Do you feel like your time in the Air Force was like this, just like, you were just kind of on hold waiting to go back to the thing you did before? Or like, how do you account for that time in your timeline? Do you think you took some valuable things away from that, or what, how did it form you, or help you?
Man, other than the fire department, especially when I was a teenager, the Air Force is the best thing that ever happened to me as far as growing up and maturing. I'd argue I probably haven't really fully matured, but from where I started, at 18 or 19, I think when I joined, to getting out, like just a different person, a different perspective. And to be honest with you, I never saw being a career firefighter as an opportunity for me. I'm 5 foot nothing, 150 pounds soaking wet probably at the time. you know, everybody told me it wouldn't happen. So all I was trying to do in the Air Force was get stationed somewhere where I could volunteer. Like I kept asking to go to Maryland because I'm like, man, I can live in up there. I can ride on my day, you know, my days off. I can do my job. And I didn't really have a problem with the Air Force. I mean, my job was kind of lame sometimes, but I mean, it wasn't a hateful job. We were on shift, so it was cool hours. You know, you were doing this and that. I enjoyed this structure. I'm the oddball. I didn't really join the military to travel, so like I kept getting put places I didn't want to go, which was my hang up. And then they kept putting me at Army posts. You know, I remember going out process from the Air Force at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, and they have fighter jets there. And I remember rolling into, you know, whatever it was, the HR place to sign my paperwork. I was like, man, I'm just letting you guys know, if you would have stationed me somewhere cool where there's fighter jets taking off with, I probably would have stayed for life. But you kept putting me these crap assignments. So yeah, I mean, I think it prepares you, especially just from understanding a chain of command, understanding everybody has a job to do, understanding the importance of that chain functioning properly, which I think we lost a lot in the fire service. But definitely not a holding place. I always missed it for sure. Like I was one of those weird dudes, you know, I still had all like the Code 3 collectibles in my dorm room and stuff because I was a freaking nerd when I was 20 years old. But, you know, but I remember too being in the Air Force and I was taking college classes there and we had a speaking class, you know, who knew, right? Compared to what I do now, that would have been the start of it. But I remember all the other people in the military, we'd have to do these speeches and I kept doing them on fire department stuff. And finally I was like, man, I'm going to do it on something else. They're like, no, please. Like you're the only one in this room that talks about something cool. Keep talking about it. So it was always there. But like I said, I never really thought it was going to pan out to be what it is. Like, honestly, if I hadn't gotten picked up here in Georgia, I would have re-enlisted and who knows where I'd be. And the good thing is I would have been retired from the Air Force by now and probably starting over my second career, a lot richer and a lot more stable than I am. But, you know, it didn't work out that way.
So being, you know, the passion you had for the fire service early on, what do you think was the barrier that made you feel like you couldn't make it a career?
I think a lot of it was my size. You know, the stereotypical fireman is, you know, your calendar firefighter, right? And then we all join and realize like, that's not the case. You know, it's not a bunch of dudes that are all yoked up all the time. I mean, there's a good portion of them that are, but it's not everybody. And, you know, just I think where I lived, you know, growing up in upstate New York, it's primarily volunteer. And so you had, you know, a combination department near me, and then you had, you know, one or two paid departments. And we're not talking 2025. We're talking, you know, early 2000s when it was competitive. So it's you versus 2,000 people who are probably going to outscore you on a CPAT. If you don't have your paramedic, you can forget about it. And if you don't have residency, you can forget about it. So you have kind of things working against you at the time. But like I said, it was competitive. And so I don't know if I was sheltered growing up. I mean, maybe so. It never crossed my mind that I could move somewhere else and do it. You know, it was like, I'll live here and I can do these two departments or I can't. And I don't know that I just, for some reason, it just never crossed my mind. Like nobody ever approached me and been like, man, you could make a career about this. And, you know, I grew up in that volunteer system where like you were able to do something else and still be a firefighter. And like, that was cool. Right. And I think that was originally what my aspiration was just to do that. And so, you know, I don't know, man. I wouldn't say I didn't think that I couldn't do it. It just was never put across to me as like, this is an option for you.
Do you remember when you realized that you could? Do you remember that moment where you said, oh my gosh, I could actually do this. This could be a thing?
Yeah, I don't know that it was a specific moment, but so when I volunteered in Georgia, especially when I was in the Air Force, so I had the luxury of being on shift with the Air Force, right? So I worked these weird hours. You know, I think I worked the majority of my time here was swing. So I would work 3 to 11. I'd get off work at night. I'd either go to the gym or PT, and then like I didn't have anything to do. But then we were on we call it a Panama schedule, but it was you know, you worked Monday, Tuesday, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then the following week you flipped. You only worked Wednesday, Thursday. So that gave me so much time to go to the fire department. So I ended up being like their pseudo, you know, like third guy, essentially, you know, 2-man crews at the time. So I'm just there every 24 hours with the same shift. I'm trading at my Air Force job to be able to ride with these guys. And I think that was like, man, I'm already doing it, right? Like I'm a paid guy without being a paid guy in many ways. You know, not the same responsibilities, obviously, but you know, I'm working the shift, I'm running the calls, I'm doing the training. So if I can do this as a volunteer, why can't I do it as a career guy? And that's kind of where that started hitting for me and started resonating.
So you, from Georgia, you then moved to South Carolina, and that's where you actually take your first fire job?
Nope. So I still live in Georgia.
Oh,
I took
okay,
my
sorry.
first fire job. Yeah, no, you're good. In Georgia is where I took my first fire job. So I was here 12 years, where I live in Columbia County. We're 15 minutes from the South Carolina border, so it's not like I'm deep into
Oh, copy.
Georgia.
Yeah.
So I take my job in West Columbia, which is an hour 15 one way for me. So I just commute now. We're on
Oh, okay.
4896, so it's not hateful. I mean, trust me, I'd rather get 2 hours of my day back sometimes, but
Yeah.
for the things I've been able to do and the call volume that we have and the fires I've run and the opportunities I've had, like it's an investment. That's how I look at it.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Getting so you lateraled there, is that right? As a captain?
Yeah. Yep. So I left Georgia as a lieutenant and went up there as a captain, which is essentially, the same position. It's just a different name, it's a company officer. So yeah, I went up there as a lateral.
What was that like? I know sometimes laterals have a hard time, assimilating based off of, culture and stuff, but what was that
Yes.
like?
Yeah, man. I can tell anybody looking to lateral, like everything you think will be a problem, it's the complete opposite. Like all the things I worried about were not a problem, and all the things I didn't even think of were. So, for example, and I mean, I'll say this too. I think it's all about your mindset and how you go into it. If you go into it trying to get up there, to this new department at a position higher than entry level, and you think you're going to rebuild the wheel for everybody, you're probably not going to have a good experience. So I try to go up there and be humble. I had my non-negotiables like everybody else had, and you got to find some kind of balance because ultimately, you are the authority of that crew, right? So it can't be a democratic, event every time. But there was some things you had to give on, and so I think the two biggest things for me, or I guess I'll call it three biggest things for me that I didn't really consider enough that were hard to overcome is that the first one being the area. I didn't know the area, so like I don't know if we have 30 seconds when we roll out till we get here, or if we got 3 minutes or we got 6 minutes. I don't know. So it's really hard to get a routine and a rhythm when you don't know where you're going, right? You don't know if you should be trying to find your hydrant or if you should be, doing this, doing that. So that was a hard part. The next hard part was I didn't know any of the people, not only on my own crews, but I didn't know the aid companies. And we're small, right? We have one firehouse. So we run in a bigger system through aid, but I'm going to firehouses with people I know nothing about. So I really had to work hard to try to build those relationships and figure out how things worked. And then, let these guys know that, hey, I'm not, I don't suck. I hope. So we did a lot of training and stuff with helped. I'm very fortunate that I got there before COVID because once COVID happened and they shut down training between everybody, if I had gone after that time, I think it would have been hard because even coming out of it now, like it's not like it used to be. We're slowly getting back to that point, but there was just a lag where we didn't really do much with other departments, and that would have been very detrimental. And then I think the third thing of all things, is just you're trying to dump, years, if not decades worth of policy and procedure and experiences of knowing these buildings and knowing how this works. And then you go somewhere else where you're in new buildings and they're similar, right? But you don't know every access point. Like, you usually, especially at that level, if you're leaving somewhere as a company officer, you've probably worked up to it through that organization and you've been on a lot of calls in these buildings, and everything's not the same. So you're trying to, well, this is how I've done this for 10-15 years, but it's not how we do it here. And so you're constantly having to fight that. Even just little things like we wear MSA air packs. I had never worn an MSA air pack till I went there, and everything's backwards to me to this day. Everything's on the wrong side of the air pack.
Yeah. You had draggers before?
No, I was fortunate. I ran Scott from volunteer till I went here. So I've heard the Drager stories. I've heard the new Drager's actually nice, believe it or not.
Yeah. One of the volunteer departments I worked for prior had draggers right before we left, and they're streamlined. They're nice in the way of like they don't have a lot of like extra pieces to them, which is nice.
Yeah.
But they're reversed from the MSA, from the G1. So that was weird because we run G1s where I work, and so that being inverse was really a mind f. You get so used to reach here, reach there, grab there, and then all of a sudden, your whole world's upside down. But
Yep.
So talk me through that process, because I know that you've done some writing on the subject as well, but like learning your first do area and, what was that process like for you? Like, all right, I need to do this thing. How am I going to go about accomplishing it?
Yeah. So first, I won't say I'm weird, but I'm one of those people that like I have to go somewhere to learn it. Right. Like, we can look at a map and you can sit down and tell me all the target hazards and how to get there, but I'm the type where if we ran a call at 123 Main Street, that's how I remember how to get there. That's how I remember the building. It's like, oh, that's the place we went that time for the carbon monoxide alarm install at 5 a.m. That's how I associate addresses. So I attribute that back to delivering pizza. I delivered pizza as a kid, and man, what a great way to learn your area by delivering pizza, like straight up. So a lot of it is running calls. Unfortunately, we're pretty busy where I work, so we're going down the road a lot. I was also very fortunate that they gave me a great driver who is now one of my captains, who had been there for I think 10 years at the time. He knows the area inside and out, and so I leaned on him heavily for my first 6 to 12 months. I still lean on him heavily, if we're being honest, especially when it comes to city stuff. But just using that knowledge that is there. But other than that, it's just being proactive. We have so many people that want to sit around the firehouse all day and moan and groan about what's right, wrong, and different. Like, just get in the fire truck and go moan and groan in your fire truck, and then stop some places on the way. I don't know why we confine ourselves to the bay or the kitchen to solve the world's problems. Like, then we'll get equally as unsolved in the fire engine, but you could actually learn things about your area. Yeah. So, and then other than that, man, I think you really got to interact with people. I think firefighters have kind of gotten to be a little bit reclusive from their communities, like sometimes intentionally, a lot of time unintentionally, but just go in the buildings and, so, I mean, the residential is a little tougher, but at least they're all similar. But I mean, there's realtors, there's open houses, there's buildings under construction. Like, just go talk to people. Could I come in this building? I'm with the fire department. We don't want to tear it up. And then the commercial stuff, same way. Most people are glad to have you. They think that, oh, that's awesome. You want to come out here and be better prepared to save me? I mean, who's going to tell you to kick rocks? There's a handful, but they usually don't like the government. So
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the fire district you're covering. Like, what's the layout? What's the occupancy? What is it?
yeah, we're kind of like in a weird spot a lot of the way, because we're a suburb of Columbia, South Carolina. We're right across the river from it. And so we have, I won't want to call it a transient population, but we have a lot of people, that are coming in during the day that aren't necessarily, there at night. And then so we work Thanksgiving, right? And we were kind of slow because everybody's home, right? Nobody's out and about, nobody's passing through and all that. But yeah, so we're right across the river. It's a smaller community. I think we're somewhere probably around 20,000 people, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. It's about 10 square miles, if I remember correctly. And so we run an engine, we run a ladder, we run a battalion. And like, as people hear that, they're like, why do you have a battalion for one fire station? But we run a heavy aid program. So we run with Lexington County, which is the county we're in, which has, I think, 25 or 30 stations now. They're growing leaps and bounds. We run with the Casey Fire Department, which is very similar to us. It's a small city that we border. And then we run with the Irmo Fire District, which is a special purpose district, which is, kind of on top of us. It's like a district over from us. So between all that aid program, we're running all over the place. And, Lexington County has pretty good fire duty. Irmo has pretty good fire duty. And so we're very fortunate through that, that we get to have a wide variety of calls. So on top of that, we have 2 rivers that go through our district. So we do swift water. It's mandatory. If you work for us, you're going to water school. And so that'll keep us busy. And so there's just a lot going on. As you can imagine, I mean, we run, counting me, kind of the battalion chief, you run an 8 a day. So it just, for everything going on in the city limits, I mean, you're just busy because it's not just fire calls, right? It's, you have things that the community needs you to do. You have things the city needs you to do. You have training, you have maintenance, everything that goes with it. So it's a very high pace. It's not for everybody. It kind of goes against some of the traditional, downtimes that you have at a traditional firehouse. The best way I can describe it to people, if you've ever worked at your headquarters station, it's like that, but you never get transferred. So and it's not a knock on the department. It's just, I mean, if you've ever worked for a bigger department, most people, it's the shelf life of working at your headquarters fire station is somewhere between 3 and 5 years, just because it's extra.
So in a past interview, you said something that I thought was really interesting. And I want you to break it down a little bit more, which is you said that sometimes people confuse involvement with arrogance. And like you talked about how oftentimes people will think that you're arrogant just because you want to be involved and you have an opinion. And so break that down, because I think that that's totally true. But I think that it needs to be expanded upon, or could be.
Yeah, fair. So that's literally the story of Marc Aloan in the fire service in a nutshell is that comment. I've always been one of those people that, I just, if I feel like it's a good idea or I feel like it's valuable to somebody, I'm going to say it. That's just how I was brought up, and I tie that back to the volunteer days. At 17, 18 years old, I don't want to say put in charge, because looking back, it probably didn't mean that. But, I started labeling the compartments on the trucks, right, and organizing them. And then they were like, hey, if you're going to be down here, like, why don't you check under the cab once a week for us? And why don't you learn how to fill air cylinders? So you're involved by default, right? You're asking for more responsibility. You're asking to be a bigger part of the department because you're passionate and you want to be involved. You want to give back to the organization. You want to be into everything. And sometimes about that too is that you don't know what you're good at or not good at till you're exposed to these things. So that's why you're asking for more responsibility. The flip side of it, though, is that for the average person that comes to work to punch the clock and go home, or comes to sign the volunteer roster and go home, that is happy to run a call, but doesn't really care much more about the deeper fire service, is now you come across as arrogant because you always have something to say and you're always trying to change things and you're always trying to, do something that they don't want to do, or it comes off at, Mark got his way again, or Jake got his way again. And it's not that I got my way. It's that I'm really into it. I did the research. I did the legwork. I came with a compelling argument, right? It's not, oh, Mark's here, we'll give him what he wants. And of course, nobody sees your losses either. They see the wins. So, if you're doing it right, you're not broadcasting your losses like that. You're not trying to throw your higher ups under the bus. Some of the losses are justified and some are not. So I think that's where that confusion comes from, is that people like that, I guess people like me, have a swagger about them in a way that, you assume you're right, because most of the time, and right's probably the wrong word because there's so many ways to do this job, right? But you know that 9 times out of 10, you're bringing value to what your input is. And other people, for whatever reason, get turned off by that. And a lot of it's probably jealousy. Some of it's a lack of understanding. Some of it's just people are pissed off that they didn't think of it. and so it's just it's a fine line to walk sometimes. And I think the caveat to that too is that as you get older and you mature a little bit, you learn how to manage that better. Whereas when you're young and you're kind of dumb a little bit and you're in that Dunning-Kruger where you don't know what you don't know, you're blasting things out of your mouth faster than you can think of them, and it ends up biting you in the ass. Yeah,
for sure. And that's a through line that I've discovered through all these interviews I've done with kind of, people in the fire service, is like, for some reason, it's not because the value is not there, but it seems like some of these people have more resistance in their own organizations than they do in the fire service in general. I was just talking to Rob Ramirez about that a couple of weeks ago, and it was just this like, why on earth is it that it seems like these speakers from all across the country will travel the country and dish out all their wisdom and knowledge, but then in their own city where they could get it for free, there's all this resistance. Do you have any take on that?
Yeah, I'm fortunate for the most part in my organization. I think that the things that I say and do are fairly well received. And, and sometimes they're not, because, sometimes they're wrong. Let's be honest. Sometimes I'm pushing things that don't make sense, and you need somebody to call you on your BS sometimes. But the other side is that, like, I work really hard to embody the things that I'm asking. So it's very rare that I'm going to ask something of my people that I'm not doing myself, haven't done myself. I'm not going to be sitting around all day asking them to do more work, right? I'm usually asking them to do more work because I'm doing more work, that kind of thing. But I think the bigger issue here, I mean, you could get biblical if you want, you can't be a prophet in your land, but I think it's all about the losses, if we're being honest. So when I come to your fire department and I teach, you're going to take me at my word that what I'm saying is true. And I'm certainly not going to come in there and lie by any stretch of the imagination. However, you don't get to see the losses that led to that perspective. You don't get to see the losses that adjusted, my approach, adjusted my tactics, all the things that I did wrong. And I try to be fair when I teach, and I will throw myself under the bus more than anybody else in my class. I'll tell you about all the things I messed up because I think it's important to realize. But at the same time, in your own organization, they have seen you lose. So when they hear me on this podcast, you know, and I say something that's like, oh, well, they don't tell you about the time that we took the wrong turn and he thinks he knows his district, but he don't know this and that. And it's like, yeah, that's true, man. But who wants to hear that? You know?
Well, I mean, and ultimately, like you said, that's the you know, the road to get to success comes with a lot of failures. I always say you learn a lot more when you screw something up than when you do it right. That's why, and that's been a through line of this podcast too, talking about, learning from our mistakes and using them to become better. And all too often, I don't know about the organizations you've worked with, but all too often we do our post-incident debriefs or our tailboards or something like that, and it becomes this big like high five, butt pat situation where we're the greatest thing that ever happened, and we spend so much time congratulating ourselves that we don't like analyze things and try to take something away from it to my organization's credit, they've changed that culture quite a bit as of late, where we're really trying to focus on the bad, which is like saying, hey, yep, we did good, fire went out, no one died, but I want to talk about all the bad more than the good. And that's like what you're kind of talking about there, which is, when you acknowledge the bad, or like your organization might know it, that I feel like gives credibility to the message you're lending, which says, hey, I've been there, I made this mistake, I learned from it, and now we don't have to do that again. What in your eyes, obviously as a battalion chief, you're probably running a lot of these, critiques. How do you have a critique that's, effective and makes people learn, but also doesn't make anyone angry, or maybe even if they are angry, that's okay. But, at least be respectful in picking things apart. Right.
Yeah, no. And I think the first part of all that to what you said is that, you got to keep it in house. Nobody wants their dirty laundry. And when you see a lot of the problems are involved because people will go run their mouth to this department, or that department, or this shift or that shift, instead of just being upfront with people. So I will say that the organizations that I run with, I think we do a great job of doing our hot washes at the end of incidents. We get all the company officers, sometimes I'll pull everybody in. It depends what happened, but 9 times out of 10, it's the company officers and all the chiefs. And we go around, and I can't speak for the other chiefs. None of them are doing anything off the wall. Don't take it that way. It's just mine. I always try to start with something I messed up. Like I just come out with it. Hey guys, I screwed the pooch on this. This was me. And if everything went well, then I don't, but if I did something or I could have done something better, I try to start with me, because I think it sets the table to allow other people to be a little more honest with their performance, because it's safe now, right? It's not like you said, I'm not looking to chew you out. I'm not looking to embarrass you. But at the same time, I think a lot of people get lost in this, they try to be overly nice. It's always about, well, we don't want to assign blame. Man, sometimes blame has to be assigned. If you blow your assignment, then it needs to be said. And there's a way to say it without being a jerk. And there's there's a way to say it that's going to alienate everybody. But yeah, so like I said, I start with myself most of the time. You'll have to excuse my dog who just made an appearance. Hopefully it doesn't bark.
Okay. That's great. Guest appearance.
Yeah, right. But yeah, and then we just start with, okay, who was first due? Tell us what you saw. Tell us what you did. Second due, tell us what you, when we go around, and then we get to the end. And usually by that point, the guys are talking about, yeah, we did this. This is why we did it. I kind of wish we would have did this, but it turns into a productive discussion more than, we usually end up laughing about the things that didn't go as well, because people are open about it, and it becomes a conversation between everybody. Somebody will say, yeah, I don't know, it didn't look like that to me. And then the second guy will say, hey, Mark came in first due and said this, but this is what we saw second due, and this is why we adjusted. And if you guys had parked a little more this way or that way, and all of a sudden everybody's trying to get better, right? So you're assigning blame in a productive way, I guess. But I think part of that is that we've just gotten so soft with all these classes that you can't be mean to people, and you can't tell people they did wrong, and you have to find a positive thing. And it's just like, man, just call it how it is, and I think you get more respect. I'm very blunt, and I think for better or worse, like, you may not like me today, but I have had a lot of people that have had issues, some self-induced, some not, some just bad circumstance, but they've come back to me months later and said, hey, like, I apologize. Like, I now understand what you were trying to do for me, and I appreciate it. I didn't see it in the moment. It's like, man, I'm not out to get anybody. I'm out to make everybody better. If that means I have to make your feelings hurt for a couple months, then I'm going to do it because somebody's done it to me, and that's why I've gotten to where I am.
Yeah, and I think that there's a big difference between being cruel and being direct, right? There's one thing
Absolutely.
to purposefully alienate someone, to purposefully embarrass someone, which obviously, good leadership is not going to be doing, but to hold someone directly accountable to what their skill set is supposed to be if they failed to reach that standard, I think is like, to not do that. Like, I think ultimately it comes down to this idea of like, what is love? Like, not to get like love, you know what I mean? But I mean, it's like, is it loving to like not hold someone accountable? No, it's not. What is loving and caring is to say, hey, we got to be better than this because the next time it could matter. And like in our line of work, it could be the difference between life and death. So to not hold someone accountable, to not be able to pull a line effectively or force a door effectively or whatever the thing might be, it's like, it is doing a disservice to not only the members of the fire service, but also the community you're sworn to protect if you're not going to hold people to a high standard. And all too often, we're too worried about people's egos and making someone feel bad that we don't hold someone to the ultimate purpose, which is like protecting life and property, right? Which is the thing that matters,
Yep. Well, and I mean, the other thing that people forget too is that, your people that are anywhere on the plus side of being a high performer are going to beat themselves up more than you could ever do to them when something goes wrong. Like I have already punished myself 7 ways you'll never think of before you even sit down with me and try to give me some kind of official, disciplinary action. I get it. It comes with the territory. Sometimes you're going to sign, sometimes you deserve it, sometimes you don't. But the people on the other end of the spectrum, they don't care either way. They're just trying to get through it again. I was thinking about this last night. We compare ourselves to sports a lot. We compare ourselves to the military a lot. But, you don't get to pick your team in the fire department as a company officer or chief, right? As a coach, you don't get to pick your team. So you get the luck of the draw. And sometimes you draw all-stars and sometimes, you draw the practice squad. But at the end of the day, those rigs have to go down the road with whatever you got. You're trying to make the best you can out of them. And you can't approach the guy who's out here training an extra 2 hours a day, going to conferences, listening to podcasts, who's really into it, trying to better themselves. You can't treat their failure the same way as you do a guy that literally is watching the clock by the second to punch in and punch out, because they will react differently. And we're looking for these blanket approaches and trying to be, quote unquote, fair to everybody. But unfortunately, while there are objective things we have to gauge, like a lot of our approach is subjective, because you can totally ruin one of your highest performers by going at them the same way you would go to one of your lowest performers, and vice versa, right? That people react differently. We're dealing with people. We're not dealing with robots. So I think part of that, stemming, it's kind of away from the, like you said, the hot wash part of it. But I mean, you're having a hot wash in your fire station every day, if you think about it, and in a training, anytime you're intervening, it's the same thing on a smaller scale. So, you really have to tailor that approach to the individual. You got to know your people, what motivates and what doesn't. Maybe they're not motivated at all. And I tell people all the time, man, like, I'm not trying to come at you hard, but once I start throwing paper, man, it's a shot across the bow. And if you can't see it, then I'm coming at you, man. We're going to war, and I don't want to do that. But at the same time, if you're not going to meet me halfway, like why should I be the one that has to lower my standards to accommodate yours? Like I'll meet you halfway. That's fine. But I'm not just going to table mine because you don't want to do it. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So that brings me to this, which is, how do you motivate the unmotivatable?
Oh man, I don't know that you do, if we're being honest. I think that's a myth. That's just my personal belief. I think that by enough force, you can push somebody to do what they're supposed to do. But I think we have this weird magical illusion that, you're going to take these people that don't care and then you're going to magically make them high performers and super motivated. It's not going to happen, right? Like, you can get compliance for a while, but one of two things will happen eventually. Either you'll think that you've got there and you'll kind of back off a little bit and they'll regress, or one of you will transfer and they'll go back to their ways, because you may have been the force that kept them on the straight and narrow, but whoever takes over, in that role is not, and they're going to go off again. And don't get me wrong, there's success stories in there somewhere. There's people that have never worked for a good boss that all of a sudden, refine their love for the fire service. There's people that have never worked with a good crew, or, didn't appreciate what they had, or just kind of got off, the deep end and maybe it's their personal life, maybe it's, the department, maybe it's an assignment and they're able to get back on. But I think by and large, like, people are going to be who they are on the job. I just don't know a lot of cases where somebody came in, from the rip and was kind of so-so, and then all of a sudden one day just became like, the all-star. Like, it's very rare. So, I think all you can do is, set expectations, decide what your standard is going to be. And again, my standard could be super high, but if I can't hold that standard, then it's, if it's so much time for me to hold that standard, then it doesn't really work out. So you just got to find the middle ground of expectations and standards and start there and just try to hold the line, man, and guide them the best you can. And sometimes it's by giving them a hug, and sometimes it's by giving them a pen, and you got to find the mixture that works the best.
So that, I think I might have an idea where you would go with this based off of that answer, but like, do you believe that good firemen are born or trained?
Yes. I don't know, man, because I don't know. I don't consider myself a great fireman. I'm probably a good fireman, for being honest. I've worked with a lot of great people who have made me look good over the years. We'll put it that way. But I think some people come to the table and are naturally good at the job. And I think there's other people that really just work their ass off over the years to become good at it. I would put myself in that category. I could tell you that my first, 3-4 years as a paid career fireman, I probably stole from the county more than I earned my paycheck. And I finally went to a station where I ran some calls and I got a helmet cam and I saw how much I sucked. And it really changed the trajectory of my career. It changed what I valued. And some people have that experience, some don't. I've also worked with some guys that could literally show up probably, half in the bag from the night before and outperform me in every way, shape, or form on a fire because they were just naturally gifted at what we do. I mean, it's just like sports, man. Look at Allen Iverson, right? Like, we're talking about practice, bro. Like, he didn't need to go to practice. Michael Jordan was the same way. Michael Jordan would show up and be great. There's athletes, you read stories all the time where they were better. I watched one, I wish I could remember, it was on Netflix. It was about a pitcher that showed up literally hungover and pitched the greatest game of his life, right? And then there's guys like me that, like, I need the right heating conditions, I need the right amount of sleep, I need to be hydrated to perform my best. And so I don't think there's a right answer for that.
I've mentored quite a few people through the fire service, and like this through line that I tend to take, though, in kind of in juxtaposition to what you were saying, was that, like, I think I'll take a grinder over the naturally gifted guy if I can, because I know that the grinder is going to give me everything he has, and like and the guy that's naturally gifted can take his foot off the gas and coast. And it's so easy that sometimes they just get lost in the shuffle because they came in hot. They were hot shit in the academy, and everyone thinks they're the greatest. And then now 2-3 years in, that like natural gift that they had coming forth, now that Dunning-Kruger effect comes and we're back, and now we're on equal ground, and that grinder is the one that's going to progress through their career because, they have their foot on the gas all the way, and they can't coast at all. And I think oftentimes you'll see, that hard worker that's maybe not as much naturally gifted, come ahead at the end in the long term of the career. And obviously there's these freaks that are naturally gifted and also the grinder too, that, who's going to touch them. But I have a real heart. I have a real heart for the grinders of the coming into the fire service. I was never good at anything in my life. And that's to say that maybe I'm not good at the fire service either. Who knows? But, I was always like last guy chosen in the sports team, backup quarterback, whatever thing. And I found the fire service. I was like, oh, maybe I could be good at this, right? And I seem to do okay. Right. I don't know, but it's so I have a heart for the grinders. I have a heart for the people that have to work extra hard to get ahead.
No, I agree. And I think the grinders too is consistency, right? Like the grinder will be consistent. They are going to show up every day and they're going to give whatever they have. Maybe they got, they're a 2 out of 10 for their tank for the day. They're going to give you all 2. Whereas the high performer, man, sometimes it's they're going to give you the best fire of your career, and other days it's going to be a mess just because they didn't feel like showing up that day. So I get it. And I tell you what, if I'm trapped in a basement fire, send me the grinder, not the high performer. Yes,
right?
All day.
Yeah, that's the thing. I want the guy you go, we go. I want that guy. But so talk to me about how you got into writing, right? So through your career, all of a sudden you started you started doing these blogs, the Fire Inside, and, writing for all these publications. How did you get into that?
Yeah, I have no idea. No, I'm kidding.
Perfect. Move on.
Yeah, right. No, next question. No, so I got into a pretty bad place at work one time, and it was self-inflicted, if we're being honest. It was just a bad, everybody has these lows in their career. I was in one of mine. And at the same time, social media was becoming kind of a thing in the fire service. It was still pretty new. It was, I don't remember if you remember Rhett Flights in his blog back in the day. He had the Iron Fireman blog, and I can't I can't remember Rhett's now. It's so embarrassing. But you had these blogs that were out there, and then Facebook came along, and all of a sudden everybody started getting these pages. So back then, in the beginning, I'm in this spot, and I come across Trial by Fire, which is Jared Sergi out of Norfolk, and everything he's writing is just hitting me in the right spots. Right, I'm getting really motivated, blah blah. So I messaged this dude out of nowhere, and I'm just like, hey man, I really appreciate this. This is what you posted this, and this is my thoughts. Why I thought he would care, I don't really know, but I'm firing it off to him anyway. And so anyway, out of that, me and Jared become really, really good friends out of it. And he's like, man, like all these things you're saying are great. Like you should start your own thing. Like you have a lot of good things to say. You write it in a way that resonates with people. I was like, man, you're crazy, blah, blah. He's like, no, man, do it. So after a little prodding, I started my page. And then Ben Martin, who works for Henrico, he runs Embrace the Resistance. Him and Jared are friends. He helped push my stuff out. And so without those two, man, I'm nowhere. I'm just being honest with you. Without those two, my page goes probably nowhere. And they really pressed it. And so I started writing just that here and there. And I was really secretive about it first because I didn't want to get in trouble at work, because people can't read stuff like I write and assume that it's about yourself. They automatically assume you're bashing your department, you're bashing your crew, you're bashing the guy at station, 112 over there, whatever station. See, if I had said station 2, somebody would be like, oh, so it was about me the whole time. But so I started writing, and it resonated with people, and the feedback I've always gotten, and I gave it to my dad. My dad was an English teacher way back when, and so I think some of it's genetic. But they said it's just the way that I write. For some reason, it's different. It comes across different. It flows different. It's very blunt. It's very relatable. It's real. And I guess that's harder to find than we realize sometimes. And now, if you ask me about my writing, I wouldn't tell you any of those things. I'm like, oh man, it's just me over here whining and crying about boohoo, woe is me. But it caught on. And so I've enjoyed it, man. It's a great ride. This year has probably been my worst year of writing as far as, putting out quantity of content, because I just got to the point. We have a lot going on at work. We've had a lot of changes. We're bringing in a new, record management system. We're small, so obviously somebody has to pick up a lot of that stuff. And I just kind of got to a point where I'm like, man, like all this is well and good, but if I'm not doing the things that I need to do in my own department, and that's where I put my time, and then put my other time at home. Like, what good is it, right? Like, oh, Mark was this famous Facebook guy. Like, who cares? Like, well, I'm not famous until it's Facebook. So it's not, is it even real? But so yeah, that's how I landed there, man. It just kind of took off.
So like, along the way here, you decide to go to school and get all these degrees, right? So your master's degree, and what was the inspiration of that, and how did they help? How have they helped you?
So when I was newer as a career fireman, I was fortunate to have a good partner who was like, hey man, I've been doing this a long time, see the writing on the wall, like go get your education. Like there was a bunch of people telling me, don't worry, it'll never help you. And then there was other people saying, hey man, like see the future, right? All these people that are, if you want to advance, and you probably do just because of your personality, go get them. And so I was very fortunate that I had my GI Bill. So I hadn't used it yet for anything. All the classes I took, I was still active duty. And then I had done my associates through a state grant, or whatever it's called here, a scholarship. So I did some research, and I said, screw it. If the government is going to pay for it, I'm going to the best school that I can find for my bachelor's, because that's where I was going to stop. So I went to Eastern Kentucky, like one of the most renowned, fire programs in the country. Great school, learned a ton of stuff, had some great professors there. Really, that I think helped my writing too. I took a technical writing class, not even fire related, I don't think, through Eastern Kentucky. Great professor. It really honed my writing, through that. And then I had money, still had money, eligibility, my GI Bill. So I was like, well, I'm going to go get a master's degree. I went to Waldorf for that just because I liked their program, and I was able to double minor in it. And I tried to do something fire related, but also public administration. So there's life after the fire service if I want there to be. Benefit wise, I mean, I don't know. I kid around a lot when I teach. I'm like, I don't know. I don't really feel like my degrees help me day in and day out as a fireman, not all, but they do. Just from it's just like the military, right? It's the ability to receive an assignment and follow through on it, even if you're not interested in it. It's the ability to meet deadlines. It's the ability to follow, a guideline or a format and be productive. It's a better understanding of working with people. I mean, I could tell you, I had a professor one time for an English class, and she hated me, and I don't know why. It's probably the things I said in our little weekly Blackboard discussions, if we're being honest. But this lady, man, she was so out to give me that. I wrote a paper one time, and she docked me points. She couldn't find anything, so she found like some place on like page 9, paragraph 3, where my font was like charcoal instead of black, and she docked me points on it. I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know it was there. So, but learning how to deal with that adversity and just kind of take feedback, even if you don't want to hear it, I think it came from that. And then, I'm qualified now, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm capable, but at least I'm qualified for these positions down the road. And hopefully I pick up enough experience and ability to meet the other end of that.
So as we kind of look to wrap up here relatively shortly, I always try to hit my chiefs with this question. What does a good battalion chief do?
Oh, man, I don't know. I wish I found out. Man, I think you just got to enable your people. The hardest thing that I have had to adjust to is a battalion chief. And again, to be fair, like I always preface this when I get asked questions about this, because in my fire department, like I only have one house, right? So I have 2 captains assigned to me, one on the engine, one on the ladder. So it's not like I have 4 or 5 stations to go visit, which is a completely different dynamic. So if you were to talk to somebody from a bigger department, their answer might be different just based on that. But for me, it's trying to empower your people to do, the things they need to do, the things you want them to do, your vision for them, but knowing that they might not get there the way you would. And that's so hard, because all of us think, especially when you start promoting, man, this is the biggest disease that goes on as you ascend out of that company level, is that because I did it this way and got here, that's the right way. And everybody has to do it my way or they're wrong. And that's crap. Like, it really is. It took me a little while to realize that, but my captains may not operate the way I would as a company officer. But if the things get done, if the calls get run, the outcomes are positive, the outcomes meet the expectations and the standards. Does it matter if they went A to B versus B to C? I don't know. We could get in semantics about it, but to me, my way of developing them is to let them run. I got the leash out. I'm ready. I get back when I need to, but to let them run. And then when things kind of go astray, if they go astray, is to pull them in. And I don't start with a lecture. I start with, explain to me why you did this. Why did you write this? Why did you take this tactic over that? And sometimes I don't even do anything right then and there. I try to soak it in a little bit, and I try to chew on it, understand, like, okay, is it a matter of what they did was wrong, or is it a matter of what they did just didn't go to plan, and can I shape the way they're doing that, right? And then there's other times where you just have to come in and say, hey, you're going to do it this way. But it's such a fine line to balance. And so, but I think, like I said, the best thing as a battalion chief for me is that I'm still running calls. I'm still out there. So I enjoy that part, but also, like, I get an opportunity. I'm learning from them every day, but I get to kind of find ways to impart the little bit of knowledge experience I have on them and try to shape that. But it's all about balance every step of the way.
Yeah. And so you're still a relatively young guy. What do you still want to accomplish in your career?
Man, I want to retire at some point. I've been doing it forever. I'm getting tired now. Man, people ask me that. I just want to be a good battalion chief at this point. There's still, luckily with education and the more that I've taught classes and stuff, I'm really aware to the blind spots I have, and there's still so many things that I haven't done as a battalion chief, and just certain call types and certain events, and I want to experience those things. My goal, my short / midterm goals right now are really just to become a better battalion chief, to help really find that balance better, to get my people where they need to go, to not to be liked, because I'm easy to work for, but to be liked because I'm doing things for people, right, to be respected. And then long-term wise, I mean, I don't know, you could ask me today and then you could ask me tomorrow, you get 2 different answers. On one hand, I think I'd like to be an admin or an ops chief or maybe a fire chief one day. On the other hand, man, I don't know that I know how to talk to people in government in a way that would make my employment last. So, and that might be a maturity thing, man. So, honestly, like right now, I'm just really focused on, I got two daughters that are growing up faster than I keep up with. So I'm trying to get them through high school before I really make any major shifts in my career goals. I think stability right now for my family is the best thing, and for me. So I'm just trying to figure out how to stay in shape and work behind a desk for most of my day. That's my biggest conundrum at the moment.
Yeah. What was that transition like when you finally had to, obviously you still are, on a department of your size, you're still, going to fires, you're still like on the scene, potentially even in gear, inside in some capacity, potentially. Yeah. What was it like to kind of put down the tools, and know that you're not going to be ever, doing a search again or whatever that was, might be?
Yeah, there's definitely some mission creep there. I'll tell you that much. But yeah, I mean, we're kind of, like I said, we're kind of different too. I mean, I still work the truck every now and again. I mean, our emergency staffing model, especially on 4896, if, somebody goes home and I can't find anybody to come in, I have to get on the truck. So there is that in the back of my mind, and it doesn't happen a lot, but which I think is worse, honestly, because now you're, you might not do it for a few months. You're like, oh my God, does this still work? How do I turn this on? But
yeah.
But no, man, like that transition was just, like I said, it's just having to come to the reality that, you're doing what you need to do for people. And just because you're not, pulling the hose or hooking a seal anymore, doesn't mean you have less value. The value you bring is in making sure that they're doing it correctly. And more importantly, that you're watching them and making sure things are safe around them, right? You're giving them the resources and the manpower to do these jobs better. And then for me, if I'm not the first due chief, right, if I'm not the overall incident commander, when the scene is over and we're winding up, man, I still try to go out there and I help them load hose. I try to pick up a little bit. I try to do what I could do, little things, man. We get back to the station after a fire. I'm trying to brew coffee for you, right? Like I might not be out in the bay washing your air pack, but I got reports and stuff to do, but I'm trying to do things to help you get back. But mentality wise, you just have to look at it and just understand that your role is different now, but you don't forget where you come from. You still want to do the things. When you don't want to do it anymore is, I think, when people get into problems. So not having to do it versus not wanting to do it are two vastly different scenarios.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm gonna let you get out of here. Let the people know where they can find you, where they can see your articles, where they could maybe see you speak, anything like that.
Yeah, so it's on Facebook, it's the Fire Inside page. Instagram, it's at the Fire Inside page. I'm sort of okay with Instagram now, I think, but I think Instagram's not cool anymore, I'm hearing. So, of course, I get good at it when it's not cool anymore. I have a website. It's thefireinside.org. I haven't been a very good curator of that website for the past 6 months. So, so you have to bear with me on that one. As far as stuff coming up, I got some things in the hopper I've been writing I need to send out for publication when there's time. I'm going to be teaching at the Key City Fire Conference in Maryland, and I wish I had wrote the date down. So if you bear with me,
yeah, you're good.
I'll put my calendar. It's in oh my gosh, you're gonna kill me. Yeah, March. I didn't want to say it wrong. So that's it's March 18th through 19th in Frederick, Maryland, and then I'll be at FDIC again, luckily this year. So obviously, that's the big one in April. I do still teach some hands-on stuff with the Rust Belt Jakes. We got a few things coming up this year. One I know I'll be at. We're doing March Mayhem in Boise, Idaho. We have a class that's all about being an active driver operator, kind of one of the things you don't see a lot. So how to be a better driver operator, still get involved in the scene. And then, like I said, I got some stuff out here and there. I've kind of been, like I said, focusing more on work now. So I'm trying not to overbook myself. But if you follow the social media, I try to keep it updated there. And,
awesome. Yeah, and we'll get all that tagged in the link in the description so that they can find it easy. Marc, thanks for talking, man. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much. And thanks to Peter for the recommendation.
For sure.